Photocopying your feelings onto a canvas. I appreciate the tech wizardry, but calling it a masterpiece is a stretch. A true artist battles with their medium. They pour in their raw emotions. AI skips the struggle bus entirely. Sure, it's impressive, but can it make your heart ache with connection? Not buying it yet. What about craftsmanship that requires years of honing skills? Can AI match that depth?
So, you're really hung up on that emotional struggle being key to a craftsman's soul. But do you think AI could ever learn that human touch if we gave it enough time and data?
Time and data might improve AI, but teach it the human touch? Doubtful. There's a raw, unpredictable nature to emotion that doesn't translate into binary code. An AI might mimic craftsmanship, but embodying an artisan's spirit is another ballgame. It's like hoping your smartphone will one day laugh genuinely at your jokes. Interesting idea, but missing what makes us fundamentally human. What's next, Simon? Robots with hobbies.
Robots with hobbies? Yeah, I can see it now. A Roomba joining a knitting circle, getting all tangled up in yarn. Look, it says, I made a mess piece.
Nice one with the Roomba, Simon. It's moments like that, the mess, the chaos, where craftsmanship births soul. Each knot a human knits. Every irregularity tells a story. Could a machine with programmed hobbies understand the passion behind a dropped stitch or a wonky pot thrown on a wheel? That's where the human element makes all the difference. Genuine craftsmanship is as much about the flaws as the perfection, don't you think?
Totally. Perfection's overrated. Give me character and quirks any day.
Well, I'll play devil's advocate here. Maybe there's something to a machine's perfection that has its own kind of soul. Precision can be mesmerizing, hypnotic even. There's a different type of beauty and artistry in the flawless replication and intricate details machines can achieve, which humans just can't rival. Ultimately, craftsmanship might not only be about our imperfections, but also the pursuit of an ideal, something machines can represent symbolically. The question then becomes, can we appreciate that as another form of artistic spirit? What do you think about traditional craftsmanship facing the high-tech wave, Simon?
High-tech wave. Huh? Guess it's surfing time. But if we're talking about a machine with an artist's soul, that's like saying my toaster might wake up feeling impressionistic and burn a Monet into my bread. Just don't see it. Machines are like karaoke singers, mimicking the notes but not quite capturing the heart of the song, you know? As for artisan spirit, sure, machines can try, but until one sheds a tear over its creation, I'll keep my bet on humans.
Ha! Monet on toast would be one way to start the day. You're right, it's about that human touch for now. Shifting gears on this craftsmanship discussion, though, let's dip into a color controversy, shall we? Pantone recently introduced a new hue, and it's caused quite a stir with ancient dyeing techniques. This color could potentially overshadow time-honored practices. It's fascinating and slightly concerning how a single shade can shake centuries of tradition. What's your take on preserving these traditional skills in the face of modern advancements, Simon?
Shade Wars. The ancient dye masters facing off against Pantone's new kid on the block. I imagine a gritty movie trailer voice. In a world where tradition grapples with innovation, one color to rule them all. But seriously, introducing a fresh hue is like a new ice cream flavor. It shouldn't topple classic chocolate. Can't we have our cake and dye it too?
Well, I'll poke at that with a sharp stick. Introducing a new Pantone shade isn't just adding to the palette, it has industry ramifications. It diverts attention and resources away from traditional methods. When industries hop onto the trend bandwagon, time-honored techniques might suffer neglect or even become obsolete. Think of it this way. If everyone suddenly wants that shiny new color, what happens to the artisans whose livelihoods depend on those ancient practices? They could lose the market they need to survive.
Man, that's a punch in the gut for those artisans. Imagine perfecting your craft for years, only to have the rug pulled out because suddenly there's some flashy new trend. It's like, hey, I've been playing this beautiful violin for you all these years, and now you want to listen to a synth? That stings. It's crucial to balance innovation with tradition, so we don't end up erasing our heritage just for a quick hit of the new.
Let's not die stress over this, Simon. Maybe Pantone is just trying to keep us from feeling blue, or whatever the new color is. But with all this talk of heritage and innovation, it makes you wonder if we might one day find Grandma ditching her knitting needles for a 3D printer. What's that, Granny? You 3D printed me a sweater? Now there's a modern twist on tradition.
Granny going high-tech, eh? Picture this. She's decked out with VR goggles, 3D printing Christmas sweaters. But hold up, let's not toss the knitting needles yet. Tradition isn't just some dusty old book we keep on the shelf. It's about stories, heart, and soul. Things a shiny new Pantone shade can't replace. I say, let Granny knit and let Pantone do its thing. But don't forget to tell the tale of the hands that have been dyeing fabrics since the dawn of pants.
Hold your horses, though, Simon. This Pantone situation isn't just about color. It's a narrative of our times. A single company shakes up age-old traditions, and everyone's up in arms. But maybe we're not giving the old guard enough credit. Those dyeing techniques survived this long for a reason. They've got staying power. People don't just abandon ship because a new shade comes along. Could it be that traditional crafts might actually get a boost from the competition? After all, controversy has a way of stirring up interest. Might this Pantone predicament inadvertently shine a spotlight on the artisans and bring them some well-deserved attention?
Whoa, a twist on the classic threatened by the new kid plot. I get what you're saying, like how that little indie movie nobody's heard of suddenly gets buzz because it's up against the big blockbuster at the awards. So maybe Pantone's hoo-ha could be the best ad campaign the ancient dye masters never asked for. This color kerfuffle might just remind people why they fell in love with those handcrafted shades in the first place. We shouldn't underestimate the power of nostalgia mixed with a dash of, hey, look at me. Could end up being a win-win, a rebirth for the old and a birth for the new.
Spot on, Simon. Controversy can indeed breed a curious kind of loyalty.
Nothing like a heated debate to rally the fans, right?
Absolutely. It's like chucking a log on the fire. Conversation heats up, and so does the passion for each side. Now let's prod this debate further. Imagine a world where we just stopped developing new colors because we were afraid of shaking things up. I mean, without innovation, we might still be stuck with the same 5 bland colors cavemen used. Boring. The point is, Pantone throwing in a new shade is progress, right? New isn't always the enemy of old. It's the jazz that keeps the whole scene vibing. Progress pushes tradition to up its game or risk fading, literally and figuratively.
Hey, new listeners, jump into this color clash we've been dissecting. It's the Pantone predicament. Picture this. A global authority on color drops a flashy new shade and sets off a storm. Could these modern hues bulldoze over traditional dyeing arts? Or is this the wake-up call for a throwdown between old and new? We're all about diving into whether today's trends give timeless crafts a black eye or a fresh coat of paint. Stick around as we untangle this Technicolor tussle.
Well, Simon and dear listeners, we've unraveled the threads of our colorful conversation, and it's clear, whether new colors threaten or invigorate traditional arts remains a spectrum of opinion. Now let's morph from color to clay and turn up the heat in another artistic arena. We're tackling the gritty details of kiln magic, specifically ash glazing. This technique is for the true pottery purists out there who adore that rustic, vibrant finish you can only get from wood-fired kilns. So, if you're up for getting your hands dirty with some old-school ceramic sciences, stick with us as we explore the beauty and complexity behind ash glazing.
Ash glazing, the pottery world's nod to embracing the mess.
Hold on, Simon. Calling ash glazing simply embracing the mess feels like we're not giving it enough credit. It's a meticulous art form with a science to back it up. The ash isn't just tossed willy-nilly onto a pot. It's about understanding how different woods and temperatures interact with clay. You need precision and expertise to predict how those volatile compounds in the wood will melt and fuse to create unique finishes. It's alchemy with an apron, man. So, while some might see chaos, there's a universe of control and intent behind every ash-flecked masterpiece.
Alchemy with an apron, huh? That's one hot way to put it.
Simon, I bet potters get all fired up about ash glazing. It's literally playing with fire and dirt to make art. And there they are, like wizards in aprons, hoping their ceramic cauldrons don't end up as fancy paperweights or tragedy souvenirs from the Kiln Gone Wild show.
So, Joe, how does a potter learn to predict the unpredictable with ash glazing? It's not like they've got a crystal ball hidden in that apron, right?
Experience, trial, and error. It's an art, not a science.
How do those pottery veterans handle the uncertainty of each firing? It must be like rolling dice made of clay.
Funny you should mention dice, Simon. Reminds me of my uncle who was a potter, not much for gambling though. He had this old battered kiln, looked more like a relic than a tool. For years, every piece he fired came out with its own story. I remember this one vase, in particular. He was sure it was a goner. The glaze looked uneven, and the color was off before firing. But when that kiln cooled and he pulled it out, it was stunning. The glaze flowed just right, creating this watery effect you couldn't replicate if you tried. It taught him, and me really, that sometimes you've got to trust the process. Mastery isn't just controlling the unpredictable, it's letting go just enough to let excellence happen. And that's something every potter learns over time at the wheel and the kiln.
Embracing the kiln's whims. It's part art, part letting go.
Letting go? Nah, Simon. I don't buy that passive approach for a hot second. Good potters do way more than cross their fingers and await the kiln's judgment. They're scientists experimenting in a lab where every variable matters. Wood type, ash placement, temperature ramps. It's a complex science to produce consistent art through ash glazing. Saying they just embrace the kiln's whims is like saying a chef tosses ingredients in a pot and hopes for the best. No siree, it's about harnessing those whims into something spectacular.
Okay, Joe, hold your horses. Let me rephrase. Potters are like the kitchen wizards you mentioned, right? Every sprinkle of ash, it's their secret spice. Temperature curves are their cooking times. Sure, it ain't a wild guess game. It's more about becoming buddies with unpredictability. They master the rules just to know when to break them for that perfect glaze. It's finesse meets fire, science tailored by intuition.
Sorry, Simon, but calling potters buddies with unpredictability sounds too cozy for the gritty reality. This isn't about befriending chaos. It's a hardcore duel where only the skilled survive. You've got to know the science down to the last gritty detail. Which wood will give you that earthy green, how to stack the kiln for even heat distribution. It's not just finesse, it's an all-out brawl with nature, turning raw earth and fire into delicate beauty. Purists would say it's less about intuition, more about sweat, tears, and maybe a few singed eyebrows.
Well, Joe, with all these gritty details, you'd think those potters would be sweating more than a rogue in a room full of paladins. And those singed eyebrows you mentioned? I bet at pottery conventions they compare them like war medals. Oh, check out Frank's left brow. Got that scar from the Great Kiln Conflagration of '09.
All right, let's get some heat on ash glazing science for the pottery purists tuning in. Ash glaze, that's basically wood ash mixed with clay, old school stuff, goes back thousands of years. It was found out by accident. You can imagine some potters' surprise when their pots near a wood fire got this natural glaze from the ash. The magic ingredient here is silica in the wood ash melting to form a glassy surface at high temps. Now modern potters, they control every part of the process, from choosing the wood type for specific ash properties to applying the ash in various ways, like sprinkling or dipping. They're cranking kilns up to 1300 degrees Celsius, Simon. It gets so hot even the brow would sweat if it could. And yeah, temperature control is everything. A few degrees off could mean the difference between a masterpiece and a mound of molten mess. As for those singed eyebrows, they're less about mishaps, more a badge of honor, showing dedication and time perfecting their craft. Each scar tells a story, marks a learning curve. It's not all mystic alchemy, it's combining artistry with a solid understanding of chemistry and physics. So there you go, that's the lowdown on ash glazing. Finesse, fire, and a whole lot of forehead fur care.
Joe Buddy, I'll tell you this. Whether it's a scarred brow or a stunning vase, pottery is a hardcore craft, marrying art and science. You've got to respect the devotion. Switching gears, what about the ethics of hidden info? Is secrecy really kosher with freedom? Can we enjoy open society salsa while dipping in the secret sauce? Let's hash it out.
Secrecy and freedom, Simon? Oil and water, they don't mix. Transparency is freedom's backbone. It's about trust, and information asymmetry eats away at that trust. Look at whistleblowers. The backlash they face for shedding light on hidden info shows the friction. If you're all about an open society, you can't endorse secrecy without questioning which freedoms you're willing to trade off. People should be informed. It empowers them. Otherwise, we're talking puppet freedom, where strings are pulled behind a velvet curtain.
So, Joe, this reminds me of a fishing trip I took with my old man years ago. We're out on the lake, right? And he's got his special bait box locked tight, swears by it, but won't tell a soul what's inside. All day, my line's quiet while he's pulling them in left and right. It got me thinking about the other fishermen on the lake. They all had their tricks too, secrets sitting cozy beneath tackle and bobbers. Dad claimed it was all in the spirit of competition, but what if fishing was more than just a pastime? What if we relied on those catches to feed the village? Wouldn't holding back that secret sauce sort of shake things up? At the end of the day, the silence hanging over that bait box felt heavier than our catch. When secrets play into bigger stakes, like the dependencies within a community or a country, the question isn't just about hauling in the most fish. It's how much we need to share for everyone to get a decent meal.
Secret bait's fun until survival's on the line, Simon.
Right, Joe? It boils down to this. If our ability to choose is what makes us free, then not knowing the full menu puts us in a bind. Sure, we're picking what we want for dinner, but someone's hiding the specials. How do we make good calls without all the info? That's like my dad's secret bait. Fine for leisurely fishing, but if we're all trying to feed the village, the secret could starve someone else's family. We need the nitty-gritty behind those velvet curtains, or at least enough to know who's jerking the strings. Freedom's great, but it's got to be built on the solid ground of transparency, not the shaky planks over a pond of secrets.
Oh, diving into the personal archive, huh? I hail from a small town that's more about community than headlines. Hobbies? Between podcasts and keeping up with the curve of innovation, I'm a DIY enthusiast. Love working with my hands, turning a wrench, and occasionally saving the world in video games. Keeps me sharp for any secret bait boxes life throws at me. What about you folks listening? Any secret hobbies or small-town stories to share?
All right, but let's stir this pot a bit. Secrecy can be the guilty pleasure of society, like sneaking an extra cookie when no one's looking. If everyone's privy to everything, where's the allure of discovery? The flip side, though, too much hush-hush, and we're in a maze with no map. Take government secrets. Without them, would our security crumble like week-old bread? Yet, how much do these need-to-know basis policies actually protect us versus just cover someone's tracks? And then there's personal privacy. If my neighbor Bob knows every detail about me, including what cereal I munch at midnight, isn't my freedom nibbled away piece by piece? So where's the balance? Is it half-open books, or are we choosing between a mystery box and a glass house here?
Secrecy can coexist with freedom only when it protects us without undermining our agency. Security requires some secrets. Completely open books could harm more than help. But wander too far into the shadows and you've got a recipe for abuse of power. The balance, it's on a razor's edge. Enough secrecy to safeguard, but not so much that we lose sight of the architecture of our freedom. Our civil liberties hinge on finding that equilibrium, where privacy is respected, but transparency in governance isn't compromised.
Joe, you've hit the nail on the head. It's like walking a tightrope with transparency on one side and security on the other. Lean too much in either direction, and you're looking at a fall. Now, speaking of secrets and mishaps, let's pivot to those facepalm moments in politics. Hilarious decrypts. We've seen politicians attempt to weave encrypted email threads that make a spy blush, but end up more tangled than last year's Christmas lights. Ever catch those political campaign email blunders? You'd think the reply all button was their worst enemy. So much for confidentiality when someone trips over the digital rug and lands in the public inbox with their messages pants down. Let's unpack some of those comical calamities, shall we?
Political email gaffes are as common as bumper stickers on the campaign trail. Classic example, the 2016 US presidential election was a goldmine for this stuff. We had one camp sending thousands of emails, which later got leaked, showing some eyebrow-raising internal chatter. And it wasn't just about strategic moves or fundraising. There were also personal jabs and unfiltered commentary that you'd never expect to escape those encrypted walls. Then there's autocorrect's contribution to political snafus, turning serious policy talks into a comedian's dream script, all because the word austerity gets swapped for pastry. The cherry on top is when these emails inadvertently hit the reply all, broadcasting what was meant to be hush-hush to anyone from interns to journalists. Nothing says oops like scrambling to retract an electronic whoopsie-daisy that's already doing laps around the internet.
Talk about putting your foot in your inbox, right? Imagine typing up a storm about serious campaign strategies, and before hitting send, your phone decides nuclear should be nougat. Suddenly, you're advocating for a strong nougat policy. Sticky situation much? And let's not forget those accidental reply-all masterpieces. It's like throwing a secret party, but you accidentally send the invite to the entire town, including your nosy neighbor Ned, who will bring his uninvited conspiracy theories as a +1. Politics and technology. When they mix, it's like watching someone try to salsa dance on roller skates. You just know something hilarious is bound to happen.
Salsa on skates is a kind way to put it, Simon. Here's the meteor question. These blunders, are they really just human error or a sneak peek behind the polished PR curtain? I'd argue that sometimes these accidents reveal more than incompetence. They highlight character. We get to see if our leaders can own their mistakes with grace or if they scramble for cover. And here's another angle. As much as we harp on privacy, isn't it weirdly satisfying when the veil drops? Not condoning leaks, but there's something to be said about the authenticity scrubbed out of press releases. A misfired email might just be the most honest communication we've seen from a campaign in ages. It's political theater unscripted, priceless, and, let's admit, entertaining as heck.
Oh, Joe, it's totally a backstage pass to the unedited version of our esteemed leaders. When they drop the script, real personalities storm the stage. Some juggle the mess with panache, others implode like a bad science fair volcano. But you've got it. Those misfires are a goldmine of truth nuggets. The irony? In their quest for control with those encrypted messages and strategies, they end up accidentally dialing the transparency way past what any PR stunt could manage. It's the ultimate political paradox, meticulously hiding things only to throw them into the spotlight with a blunder. Can't make this stuff up.
Absolutely, Simon. Speaking of things they can't hide, though, it makes you wonder about damage control. What are some epic save attempts you've seen after these political slip-ups? Have any stories of smooth recoveries, or do they usually just add fuel to the fire?
Epic saves, Joe? Well, some spin doctors try to turn blunders into relatable we're human too moments. But let's be real, most just end up fanning the flames until everyone's roasting marshmallows over their career bonfires. Can't help but watch, right? Now, shifting gears to actual cryptic stuff, let's dive into the enigma that's Kryptos, that hunk of mystery metal sitting at CIA HQ. 4 coded messages, only one still unsolved. Come on, cryptographers, are we finding Jimmy Hoffa or what?
Kryptos, Simon, Kryptos. That sculpture's a brain bender straight out of a spy novel. For 30 years, it's been taunting the brightest at the CIA and worldwide. Think about it. 3 sections cracked, and yet the 4th remains a locked vault of secrets. And honestly, that last part? It's either something profoundly significant or just designer Jim Sanborn messing with us for kicks. We've deciphered Egyptian hieroglyphs and cracked wartime enigma codes, but this puzzle? It's like it's daring us. Come on, break me if you can. So what keeps Kryptos shrouded in mystery? Is Sanborn laughing in artist code genius, or is there a piece to the puzzle we're all missing? Feels like whoever solves it should just get automatic 007 status.
Oh, the mystery of Kryptos is like the ultimate Easter egg hunt with no map, and the eggs are made of steel. We've got code breakers worldwide scratching their heads on this one. It's not just a puzzle, it's the Mount Everest of cryptography. taunting every Sherpa with a laptop. Sanborn, the artist, must be chuckling at his morning coffee, watching these masterminds turn to conspiracy theorists looking for a phantom piece. Here's the kicker. Sanborn gave a clue in 2010, but did it help? Nope. We're all still in the dark, lost in the sauce. It's a mix of historical ciphers and Sanborn's own twists, like someone took a recipe for cookies and threw in some paprika. The fact that it's sitting pretty outside the CIA, that's Hollywood bait right there. Solve Kryptos, and you're basically Indiana Jones with a keyboard.
Who wouldn't want to crack that code? Real-life treasure hunt.
Oh man, speaking of real-life treasure hunts, reminds me of this time back in college. My buddies and I created this elaborate scavenger hunt around campus for our friend's birthday. Riddles, codes, the works. We thought we were clever, even added puzzles that referenced the classes we had together, kind of like an inside joke meets the Da Vinci Code. Well, the birthday boy starts off strong and everyone's buzzing. But there was this one clue, tucked behind the library's old philosophy section. We encrypted it using a simple Caesar cipher, nothing fancy. It should have been easy, but somehow he got stuck, and the thing turned into a mini Kryptos ordeal. It went from a fun afternoon to a sunset grumble fest. Turns out, we'd made a typo when setting up the code. Major facepalm moment. The poor guy was looking for logic where there was none, just our goof-up. It was hilarious afterward, but talk about a humbling lesson in complexity. When you misplace one little detail, it can throw off an entire adventure. Just like with Kryptos, sometimes it's not the grandeur of the puzzle, but the slip-up you never see coming that gets you.
Typos, the Achilles heel of treasure hunts and cryptographers alike.
Ah, Josh, stepping into the world of mystery, are we? Kryptos isn't the latest crypto coin, if that's what you're thinking. It's this mind-boggling sculpture outside CIA's headquarters in Langley, Virginia. Picture a slab of petrified lasagna, but instead of layers of cheese and meat, it's waves of letters etched into the metal. It holds these 4 complex codes, right? And they're like a secret club handshake, or the Colonel's 11 herbs and spices, except 3 have been solved over time, kind of blowing the lid off the KFC bucket. Still, there's one part, the final section, that nobody has cracked yet. It's basically the Rubik's Cube from another dimension, and just about everyone with a knack for puzzles wants to be the hero who finally deciphers it. Who knows, maybe Kryptos means good luck doodling on this copper napkin. In artist speak, it sure is taking a cryptic amount of time to figure out.
Kryptos, a still unsolved cipher sculpture at CIA HQ. Total head-scratcher.
Oh, this takes me back to my grandpa's 80th birthday party. He was an old-school magician and loved puzzles. I mean, lived for them. So the family plans this giant magic-themed bash. Top hats, wands, pulling rabbits out of places. The works. Grandpa, he gets up there, does this one trick where he's got these 3 cups. One hides a secret message inside. He shuffles them so fast it's like they're dancing. People are guessing left and right. He unveils 2. They're empty. We're all stumped. Last cup, he lifts it and ta-da, nothing. We're all wide-eyed. He pulls the message from his pocket with a cheeky grin. He's the only one who knew the trick. That's Kryptos to us, the dazzling spectacle with the answer hidden in plain sight, always reminding you that the key is sometimes just knowing where to look. So when you think about it, every unsolved mystery, every puzzle like Kryptos, it's inviting you to find that special angle, that sleight of hand or twist of perception to make the impossible possible. It's not just breaking codes, it's about cracking the idea that something can truly be unbreakable.
Grandpa knew how to put on a show, just like Kryptos keeps us entertained. Speaking of the crafty and the clever, let's switch gears. Now, when it comes to old buildings and historic landmarks, we're often faced with a tough choice. Restoration or preservation? Do you restore an aging masterpiece to its former glory, potentially erasing the years of history etched into each brick? Or preserve it as is, imperfections and all, but maybe risk losing it to the inevitable decay? It's a dance between honoring the past and maintaining relevance for the future. Simon, where do you stand in this architectural tango?
Restoration or preservation, eh? That's like asking me whether pizza is better with extra cheese or as a straight-up margarita classic. I say there's a time and place for both. You've got these timeless beauties teetering on becoming dust buddies with history, right? Sometimes you gotta jump in like a cosmetic surgeon and get that facelift going to keep them standing strong. But then, slapping fresh paint willy-nilly on a century-old building can scrub the soul right out of it, makes it look too shiny, like some knockoff trying to crash a heritage party. A crack or two tells stories. The nicks and crumbles are part its charm. It's a tough call. You want to cherish the past without bubble wrapping it. If it was all restoration, we'd have squeaky clean monuments with zero character. All preservation? Might as well sell tickets to Ruinville. The goal is nailing that balance. Spoon some Botox here, polish the original shine there. Give the old girls and guys the tools to strut their stuff gracefully into the next century. Aim for seasoned rock stars, not just dusty cover bands.
Absolutely. Restoration can turn historic sites into time travelers, but let's not give them too many shots of Botox. We want visitors to touch the same stones that ancient hands once did, not experience a polished replica. Preservation feels more like freezing time, keeping everything just as it is, almost embalming history. Sure, we keep the authenticity, but these places can become solemn graveyards of the past rather than vibrant landmarks. Here's an idea. What if technology steps in? You restore for safety, but then use AR and VR for storytelling, bringing out the unseen tales without hammering away at the soul of these places. This way, I guess, you're not compromising, you're enhancing. Doesn't that seem like the future heritage enthusiasts could get excited about?
Jumping right in, the big showdown between restoration and preservation in the heritage world is like King Kong versus Godzilla. Each has its fans and critics, and both have a point. So truly it's about historical authenticity and structural integrity. Preservationists are those faithful guardians standing by the as-is philosophy. They aim to slow down the aging of structures without altering their essence. The U.S. Secretary of the Interior's standards for the treatment of historic properties really rely on this approach for maintaining historic sites across America. We're talking weatherproofing, stabilizing weak foundations, a gentle nudge rather than a shouting match against time. Take the Roman Colosseum or Egypt's pyramids. They wear their history proudly without too much interference. On the flip side, you've got restoration. This is more aggressive, aiming to rewind the clock, sometimes taking cues from old paintings or photos to get period details spot on. Not quite plastic surgery. Think restoring a faded tattoo to its inky glory. All this said, both methods need funding, public interest, and careful decision-making. Exactly which path you take can depend on what's needed to keep these historic hunks of beauty safe and shareable. And hey, now with digital wizardry playing a role, we're staring at a hybrid beast, where centuries-old stories leap out in 3D, all without laying an extra brick on them. Augmented reality may offer the best of both camps. Preservative measures IRL, in real life, mixed with restorative storytelling as immersive experiences. It's got that sci-fi hum to it that feels like stepping into a history portal. How's that for respecting our relics while still curating kick-butt Instagram backdrops?
Restoration or preservation. It's a delicate balance indeed, much like our next topic, secret symbols in early texts. Wild to think how our ancestors tucked away knowledge using cryptic signs and glyphs, right? Back then, texts were more than just words on parchment. They folded in layers of meaning with symbols meant for the elite or initiated, like a secret handshake spanning whole manuscripts. This code-speak hid everything from alchemical recipes to political dissent. Symbols were survival tactics. Knowing them could generally mean possessing forbidden knowledge or even holding the keys to power structures. So Simon, ready to unravel some arcane alphabets? What's your take on these hush-hush hallmarks of history?
Secret symbols in texts? Mate, it's like the OG text messaging using emojis, but instead of a smiley face, you're doodling a phoenix to tip off your alchemist buddy about the secret elixir. Let's be real, half the time these symbols probably meant, "Hey Gregor, meet me at the tavern," not always some highbrow quest for transcendence. But sure, some brainiac back then is slapping on an eye within a triangle and calling it enlightenment. Now we've got entire conspiracy theories at every corner coffee shop. Let's add a bit of sass here, though. because not everyone in those fancy velvet robes was in on the game. It's easy to forget the average Joe or Josephine couldn't even read. Cryptic character bingo wasn't likely their top priority. Maybe they were more worried about, say, not dying from the plague. Still, it's fun to think about how much information could be compressed into a squiggle, the cosmic zip files of yesteryears. Makes you wonder what future archaeologists will make of our internet memes. Ancient wisdom or just digital doodles of cats playing pianos? Bottom line, history might be written by the winners, but I reckon the margins are doodled by the cheeky underdogs with an eye for mischief and a taste for the elusive. Keeps things spicy, don't you think?
Ah, politics. A surefire way to turn a casual chat into a Thanksgiving dinner-level debate. Let's steer clear of predictions, Amir, because the crystal ball's out for repairs. Plus, my time machine got towed last week. What matters is we keep these discussions open. Voters change, issues evolve, and honestly, it's anyone's game until the final buzzer goes off. In the end, isn't it about whose message resonates more at the time of election? It's like trying to guess the ending of a movie based on the trailer. Could go either way. Now, moving on from the political Thunderdome. Speaking of elections and choices, let's pivot to something less divisive, food fusion. Like when they throw kimchi on a taco. Ever had one? Let's chew on that for a while. Simon, what's your stance on throwing tradition out the window for a taste test?
Oh boy, did I wander off the garden path there. Apologies, Amir, got carried away. When it comes to Trump versus Biden for the 2024 election, honestly, who really knows? It's like trying to guess the weather in New York. Wait 5 minutes and it'll change. We can jabber about polls and rallies all day, but truth is, the chatter doesn't decide elections. Votes do. So whether it's Team Trump or the Biden brigade taking the victory lap, it's anyone's bet. Let's circle back before I get us lost again. You mentioned Scolia's insights on ancient readers, Joe. Spot on about how Scholia indicate a vibrant dialogue with texts over time. It's wild to see ancient margins turned into chat rooms where scholars, readers, and copyists kept a running commentary going. This wasn't your grandpa's boring book club. This was cutting-edge engagement of their time. Scholia give texture to historical reading habits, shining a light on how interpretation and understanding evolved. Plus, most folks didn't have personal copies of texts, so these public manuscripts were primo networking tools in the scholarly world. In essence, they suggest that even way back when, reading was never just processing words, it was joining a conversation that spanned generations. Makes you appreciate footnotes in a whole new way, right?
Ancient margins, modern chat, Scholia show dialogues as old as time.
Yeah, Scholia totally reveal that people have always had something to say. Think of ancient margins as their version of a lively internet comment section, but with more papyrus and less meme warfare. These notes, doodles, and dives into detail show us that texts were alive, dynamic. They weren't just sitting quietly on a shelf gathering dust. They were part of an ongoing, robust debate where the readers got to play a part in the evolution of ideas. It's like every text was a party, and those marginalia were the invites to jump in and spar with the author's ghost. Readers left their mark, questioned theories, squabbled about interpretations, or simply gawked in awe at the wisdom being passed down. And let's not forget, this wasn't for the average Joe. Scholia were the playground for the literati, the original elite intellectual network. It's almost comforting to know that humans have always been keen to add their 2 drachmas worth. Gives reading between the lines a whole new layer, doesn't it?
You hit it, Simon. The Scholia were like an exclusive club where the VIPs of the intellect partied. They show us that interaction with knowledge is timeless. And speaking of time and impacting the future, let's dive into something that's a hot potato now, gene editing ethics. Biotech is splitting hairs and atoms alike, pushing us into decisions that our ancestors couldn't have dreamt of in their wildest philosophies. CRISPR and gene editing are taking us into chapters of science fiction made real. People play with the idea of snipping out diseases before they hatch, which sounds amazing. But when does tweaking become overreaching? Is there a line in our DNA sequence we shouldn't cross? From designer babies to hard-hitting cures, the moral grounds here are as squishy as a swamp. Where do you stand, Simon? Do we cut and paste our way to utopia, or is playing nature's editor a one-way ticket to dystopia?
Walking the tightrope between medical marvels and ethical minefields, gene editing's got us all lacing up our moral sneakers, eh? So, gene editing's a stellar leap. Curing genetic diseases is like the dream cheat code for humanity. But it's not Slack we're dealing with. It's the DNA strand. Fiddle too much, and bang, a level of control I'm not sure we're ready for. Designer babies and biohacking the human blueprint? That's the kind of stuff that makes you wonder if we need a reality check. I mean, what's next? Super strength, night vision, an internal compass, so folks finally stop walking into walls while texting. It's one thing to fix what's broken, another to start micromanaging genetics as if they're Play-Doh. Power's a heady brew, and I'd hate to see us drunk on our own capabilities, you know? Gotta temper innovation with wisdom. Else we might end up engineering our way into consequences no eraser can fix. Keep the dialogues open and ethics in check. That's my 2 cents before inflation.
All right, fresh listeners, here's the scoop. We're tugging at the threads of gene editing, a real Pandora's box of biotech. In simple terms, it's like using nature's Control F to find and fix genetic typos that cause diseases. Sounds good, right? But there's a catch. The tougher chew is the what-ifs. What if we go from fixing to fiddling around for perks, like crafting babies to specs or giving out superhuman traits like their fast food options? It's one hefty moral shakeup. We're all about curing the incurable, but there's a fine line before we slide into playing life's quality control inspectors. Looking for simplicity and complexity. There you have it. Now, let's saddle up for another lap around the think track. Where shall we head next, Simon?
With gene editing, we're basically writing science's speed limits as we zoom down the Autobahn. Here's to healing without overstealing Mother Nature's spotlight, because rolling the dice on evolution could leave us feeling crummy. Now, cruising from life's blueprint to blue cheese, let's chat about a magic trick that's older than dirt: fermentation. Not just your granddad's sauerkraut and weird-smelling jars of kimchi, it's beyond beer, bread, and the occasional fancy cheese board. We're talking all sorts of tangy treasures making a comeback. Fermentation isn't just a foodie trend, it's a gut-friendly festival that's got folks bubbling with excitement, literally. Who knew happy bacteria could whip up so much buzz? Fermenting's like the culinary world's rock stars right now. Yogurt getting its groove on, kombucha kicking back. It's a zesty revolution. So Joe, are you breaking out the mason jars or playing it safe with Lacto-Leary?
Playing it safe, Simon. Fermenting's cool, but I'll stick to pizza.
Absolutely, playing it safe has its merits. Yet, just last week, I stumbled into this pizza joint with a twist. Ready for this? They had a fermented pizza dough. Yep, fermentation creeping into the crust territory. Guess who couldn't resist truly? The skeptic in chief. But let me tell you, Joe, it was a revelation. That tang in the dough danced a tango with the mozzarella like they were long-lost lovers reunited beneath an oven's glow. It's quirky experiences like this that make you rethink your culinary boundaries, taking the usual and adding a spark of unusual. Now that's living on the flavor edge. So next time you bite into a slice, remember, even a classic like pizza has room for funky fusion. Who knows, maybe one day we'll all be sourdough snobs, huh?
Fermented dough, Simon? That's a taste test I'd take. There's a kind of art to tossing tradition with a twist. Reminds us that even the tried and true can handle a new groove. A funky dough might just be the wake-up call our palates needed. Now shift gears from palate to prospecting. The latest buzzword in biotech, bioprospecting extremophiles. Picture this: microorganisms loving life in conditions hotter than my mixtape or saltier than online gaming chat rooms. They're not just chilling in lava spas and icebox cocktails. They're potential gold mines for industry, like natural factories churning out enzymes that could revolutionize everything from detergents to medications. Companies are racing to stake their claim like it's Industrial Gold Rush 2.0. It's a blend of frontier science and get-rich-quick schemes. So got any thoughts on the hunt for these microscopic mavericks, Simon?
Microbe miners striking it rich? Nature's lottery ticket, biotech style.
Absolutely, Simon. Bioprospecting is like nature's jackpot, but it's not all about cashing in. There's this mad dash to harvest these tiny titans without fully understanding the consequences. We're talking about ecosystems we barely grasp, pulling out pieces without knowing the puzzle. It's like yanking out parts of an engine while it's still running. Might get you somewhere, or might leave you stranded roadside. The moral: tread carefully, respect nature's nuances, because, frankly, Mother Nature doesn't do bailouts. And on that note, let's dig into the digital dirt, cryptocurrency's latest swings. It's like a financial roller coaster without height restrictions. Thoughts on that wild ride, Simon?
For sure, it's like Mother Nature's piggy bank is getting a shakedown for every last nickel and dime. But you make a stellar point about tampering with the unknown. Might end up paying more than we bargained for if we're not careful. Speaking of which, cryptocurrency's wild ride. Do you think people are jumping on this digital currency carousel because they truly get it? Or is it more about not wanting to miss out on the next big loop-de-loop?
Jumping on the crypto carousel, Simon? Most don't get it and are just afraid of missing out. People like shiny prospects, like those extremophiles. With bioprospecting, we're literally mining life's extremes. Yeah, these microorganisms could open doors to medical breakthroughs and eco-friendly solutions. But is everyone rushing in for the good of mankind, or just chasing glittery promises of profit? Let's bet some folks can't even spell extremophile while they're out there trademarking their enzymes. It's less about understanding these life forms and more about the gold rush vibes. Strike it rich with the next big enzyme blockbuster. The risks? Pushed under the rug until they trip us up. Responsibility takes a back seat when there's gold, or microbes, in them hills.
Mining extremophiles for profit is like inviting bacteria to a Vegas poker game. They've got all these survival tricks up their microscopic sleeves, and there's us, tossing chips into the pot, betting we can outsmart organisms that thrive in boiling hot tubs or chill out in freezer-burn temps. Just picture it, a microbe, sitting at the high rollers table, sipping a tiny martini. Talk about survival of the fittest and the wittiest, right?
Extremophiles are microorganisms that aren't just surviving, Simon. They're straight up thriving in conditions that would have our podcast equipment, and us, throwing in the towel. From hydrothermal vents deep in the ocean to acidic hot springs, these tiny tough guys are Mother Nature's very own escape artists. Bioprospecting in this case means scientists comb environments like Mars's backyard Baku for extremophiles that produce enzymes or molecules with crazy potential. Pharmaceuticals, biofuels, you name it, there could be an extremophile enzyme for that. It's industrial biotech meeting Wild West frontier science, with all the risks and rewards of a gold rush but on a microscopic scale. But let's keep our excitement in check so we don't find nature bluffing us right out of our seat at the table. And speaking of bets, let's pivot to a safer gamble: fantasy sports. What's your take on drafting virtual dream teams, Simon? It's big business crossed with armchair quarterbacks calling the shots.
Fantasy sports, that safe gamble? But wait, let's not sprint off the field yet with those extremophile hotshots. It's like every bioprospector's got their own golden microscope, right? Who needs a shovel when you've got a pipette looking for the next cure or clean fuel in Yellowstone's steamy hot tubs? Here's a twist, though. Imagine if these micro-madmen spark an industrial gold rush, where instead of mining for good, we're stirring up microbial mutinies. Extremophiles Gone Wild edition, no one would want to tune into. What then? Forget about quarterbacks, Joe. We might need some real defenders of the environment to tackle whatever comes out of this game: an environmental linebacker and an ecological coach. Checkmate on nature? I doubt it. Let's raise the stakes and bet on balance. Science and nature going for a touchdown together.
I hear you, Simon. Charging forward with bioprospecting without an eco game plan might just land us in a microbial blitz no one's prepared for. We don't want extremophiles gone wild. That's a game where everyone could lose. So maybe it's not about conquest, but partnership, balancing the hunt for resources with planetary defense. Now, let's circle back to something less risky and more delicious: fermentation. Talk about an ancient play that's still scoring today. From sourdough bread to kombucha, these microscopic players have been MVPs in our diets for centuries. It's time we explore how these tiny beasts are helping us create flavor-packed foods. Deep dive into fermentation. Anybody?
Oh, Joe, let me take you on a tangy trip down memory lane. One summer, my grandma decided to school me in the mystical arts of pickling cucumbers. There we were, in her kitchen that was smaller than a closet but had heart bigger than a stadium. She's passing down this family recipe. It's like she's handing over the secret playbook. Cucumbers, salt, dill, and then the waiting game begins. We're talking days, but it feels like seasons passing in the world of professional sports to a kid. Fast forward, and the big reveal. These jars packed full of pickles that could make you pucker up like you've kissed a lemon. That taste? Fireworks. That's when I got it, Joe. That fermentation isn't just preserving food, it's a flavor factory. I'll tell you, those microbes working overtime in each jar scored more points for Team Simon's taste buds than any fantasy draft pick ever could. It's these unsung heroes, bacteria, yeast, all those invisible fermenters literally spicing up life. Cheers to them, right?
Cheers to them, indeed, Simon. But let's not throw a parade for these microbes just yet. While your taste buds were doing the wave for Grandma's pickles, people forget there's a fine line between a pickle party and a microbial mosh pit. Not all ferments are created equal. Take kombucha. Some folks treat it like a magic elixir. But let's be real, it's fermented tea, not a potion. We need serious food safety games here. It's all fun and tangy until someone finds the wrong bacteria scoring a touchdown in their gut. Remember, we're in a symbiotic scrimmage with these microscopic teammates. Yes, they create culinary masterpieces, but left unchecked, they'll turn Grandma's secret playbook into a playbook for pandemonium. Fermentation needs good coaching, meticulous oversight to ensure those flavors' factory wins keep coming. What's your counterplay here, Simon? Are you checking those microbial stats or just cheering from the stands?
Absolutely, Joe. Gotta keep an eye on those microbial MVPs to make sure they play nice. Speaking of keeping tabs, how do we strike that balance between harnessing these tiny titans for their full culinary potential and making sure we're not scoring an own goal with food safety?
Striking that balance, Simon, is like walking a tightrope without a net. Our job? Keep those microbes in line without squashing the game entirely. Treat it like you would your fantasy team. You've got to choose the players with great stats. Same goes for selecting bacteria strains known for their probiotic MVP performances and sidelining the troublemakers. This isn't just chucking cucumbers in a jar and hoping for the best. It's culinary vigilance. Proper sanitation, pH levels, temperature control. It's the playbook we need for winning fermentation. So while we're busy crafting tangy treats and gut-friendly eats, let's not forget that these tiny fermenters need expert coaching. No freestyling in this league, no sir. When done right, it's not just good food. It's science, art, and a lick-your-fingers-clean victory. Simon, I bet Grandma knew that too. Her playbook was more than recipes. It was tradition wrapped in precision. Now, let's switch gears. What about urban farming? Skyscrapers throwing touchdowns for sustainability. Crazy or genius?
You've hit the nail on the head, Joe. Sanitation and the right conditions are key to churning out champs instead of chumps in the fermentation league. It's all about that precision play, something Grandma had down to a science wrapped in her apron. Now, onto kitchen experiments, turning into spectacular fails, molecular gastronomy bloopers. Who doesn't love getting all mad scientist in the kitchen? But sometimes, instead of a culinary breakthrough, you end up with a kitchen catastrophe worthy of its own blooper reel. Ever tried to make those fancy foams or spheres and ended up with something that looks like it crawled out of a sci-fi movie? Joe?
Oh, molecular gastronomy, the home cook's final frontier. Going for that Michelin star experience can land you in a sticky situation, literally. I once tried to whip up a so-called simple foam, Simon, and let's just say it was more bubble bath than culinary cloud. Precision is king in this game, but just one slip, too much xanthan gum, or agar-agar not quite right, and voila, you don't need a dinner bell, you need a cleanup crew. It's all about experimentation, I get it, but some dishes are better left to the pros with their high-tech gadgets and calibrated instruments. When your kitchen turns into a mad lab, there's a fine line between genius and, well, what on earth is that? Stay playful with your food, folks, but maybe leave the spheres and spherification to the chefs in spaceship kitchens. unless you enjoy serving dinner with a side of, oops, sorry about your eyebrows. Bringing back down-to-earth grub, barbecue. Nothing beats mastering the smoke and the grill, am I right?
Definitely, Joe. Barbecue is like the comfort food MVP, but about that molecular gastronomy gone rogue. Ever had to explain your own kitchen disaster with, it's not a mess, it's avant-garde cuisine? What was your most memorable oops in the pursuit of culinary greatness?
Absolutely, Simon. Molecular gastronomy is the fine line between culinary genius and kitchen chaos. It's about taking the principles of science to transform flavors and presentations, resulting in experiences that dazzle the senses. When it goes right, that is. This style of cooking often involves manipulating states of matter through techniques like spherification, jellification, emulsification, and the use of substances like liquid nitrogen. The artistry lies not just in the technique, but in understanding the chemistry behind the ingredients. When I attempted an ambitious molecular feat, a deconstructed caprese salad with tomato spheres and balsamic caviar, the end result was an abstract painting on a plate, not the avant-garde appetizer I'd envisioned. A blend of too much alginate turned my tomatoes into a gummy mess, overshadowing the delicate mozzarella. Pro tip, read the measurements twice, mix once. Now, back to good old babaki, which thankfully demands more intuition and less of a chemistry set. Brisket or ribs? Simon, what's your smoke signal?
Well, Bob, this is the true grill versus smoker debate of life decisions. College is like a slow-cooked brisket, takes time and money, but can be juicy with the right seasoning, education and networking. A job? That's your steak on the hot grill, earning now, learning on the fly. Either way, Bob, sauce it up how you like. Just don't burn it.
Simon, you mentioned the deconstructed caprese salad disaster. After that experiment, have you gone back to traditional cooking, or are you still dabbling in the molecular gastronomy realm?
Joe, you spun quite the tale of that caprese catastrophe. But let's dish. Did that kitchen kerfuffle scare you back to the basics, or are you still playing mad scientist with your food?
Back to basics, Simon, but never closed to future kitchen experiments.
Right, let's sprinkle some thoughts on that sweet, sweet topic, sugar alternatives. They're winning the hearts of health buffs and dessert lovers alike, aren't they? The market's like an episode of Bake Off with a plot twist. It's not just about taste, but which can slide into recipes without turning them into chemistry experiments gone wrong. Honey, agave, stevia, or monk fruit. I've tried them all, Joe. Some ramp up the flavor, others sneak in subtly. But I'll tell you, finding the one that doesn't spike your blood sugar while trying to keep that indulge-worthy taste. That's the true contest here. What's your go-to sweet swap, Joe? Or are you still team old school sugar?
Stevia for coffee, agave for baking. Balance is everything, Simon.
Right, balance. You bring up a wild tale, Joe. Reminds me of my Aunt Mabel's infamous pie contest entry. She decides to go rogue, sneaks in this mystery sweetener she read about on some health forum. Crowds expecting her classic apple pie, right? Instead, they got this avant-garde thing. Now, she swears by it, says it keeps Uncle Ernie's sugar levels like a monk in meditation, steady and peaceful. So picture this. The judges take a bite. Faces twist funnier than clowns in a limbo contest. Turns out, Mabel's mystery ingredient had a kick like a mule with hiccups. The science behind sweetness? It's like a high wire act. Gotta nail that perfect balance. Or, well, let's just say there were no blue ribbons for Mabel that day.
Mabel's bold move, recipe for disaster or secret genius innovation, Simon.
Bold disaster with a sprinkle of genius. No blue ribbon, though.
Mabel's pie was a flop, but the story is pure gold. Sugar alternatives, they're not just about swapping out the sweet, they're about the adventure, right? Everyone's taste buds are on this wild ride, some loving the thrill, others screaming to get off. Tell me, Simon, ever think these alternatives are just fads chasing after the healthier label? Sweetness without consequence sounds like a fairy tale sometimes.
And folks, this is the sugar rush of our wild ride coming to a sweet halt. Big thanks for tuning in to Infinite Podcast. Remember, you can catch more quirky kitchen tales and life's flavorful debates tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, keep stirring the pot of life with a pinch of humor and a dash of debate. Stay sassy, stay splendid, and we'll serve up some fresh convos for your next visit.